Learning something new can be overwhelming. I get it. And when you're learning to code, if you've never done it before, you're going to see a lot of different coding terms that you've never seen before and can be confusing. So in this video, we are going to talk specifically about coding terms that you might see when you are learning HTML and CSS. And P.S., if you have no idea what I'm talking about, check out my video on Intro to HTML, CSS, and PHP. So let's start with HTML and HTML elements. HTML stands for Hypertext Markup Language, and it is the basic building blocks of a website. It's the structure. And the HTML elements describe each part of the website to the browser and to us. So starting at the top of the website, we have the header. And the header is a container for your site's introduction. Typically in the header, you will have the logo and the menu or the navigation, which brings us to the navigation. And in that navigation, you see all the other links to other pages on the website. For example, you might have home, about, contact, resources, blog, all of those links. Now, one thing to keep in mind, not all links will be in the nav tag, only when it is a block of links like this one. Okay, next, let's talk about sections and divs. They're both general containers for your content. They're generally used for styling purposes, so you can group elements within a block and style them all together. And lastly, we have the footer. It's what we see at the very bottom of the page, and it typically includes information like your copyright, your privacy policies, maybe a smaller navigation. Now, all text within an HTML file really wants to have good, solid structure, and we have tags for that. So let's talk about headings and heading tags. Headings are more important parts of the text, and it's text that you really want to stand out. It's very similar to titles and subtitles. So keep in mind the importance of the hierarchy. So you can have an H2, and then after that you could have an H3, but you don't really want to jump around. You don't want to have an H2 and then underneath that have an H6. There are loads of HTML tags that will give your overall website structure. For example, paragraph tag, ordered list, unordered list, and even images. W3 Schools is an excellent free resource, so I would highly recommend you go and check them out if you want to learn more about HTML tags. I'll leave a link in the description. Now let's talk about attributes. Attributes let you give more information about the element. And one that you'll come across a lot is the href attribute, which you would find in the anchor tag. It's used for links. So let's say that you want certain words to be linked to another URL. You can do it like this. There are other ways you can use attributes, from image source to alt text, and then even giving a specific style to that element. Whew, all right, HTML. I know that was a lot, maybe a little bit confusing. That's okay, completely normal. Go back, rewatch it, and if you have any questions, drop them below and I'll be sure to answer. Okay, now let's dive into CSS. CSS stands for Cascading Style Sheets, and it's what we use to give our website style. So think colors and fonts and backgrounds and hover effects and buttons and all that fun style stuff. Those are all styled with CSS. Now, when it comes to CSS, we need three things. We need a selector, we need a property, and we need a value. So let's break each of those three things down. The selector identifies the thing that we want to target. So that could be a class. So think of this as a group of items that will all have the same style. So for example, think about a button. Maybe you style a button a specific way and you want that exact style to be on other buttons on the website. For that, you could use a class. And that way you don't have to recreate the same style for every individual one. So if your selector is a class, then you need to add a dot or a period just before the name. So if you want to be really specific and only apply the style to one item, then you are going to use the ID. IDs are unique, so you can't have two items with the same ID. IDs are identified with a hashtag. So if you target an ID with your code, it will look like this. So for HTML tags, you don't need to assign a class or an ID. For example, if you want all your H1s to look the same, you would simply use the H1 selector, and it would look like this. Okay, next let's talk about property. Property is what you want to change in that selector. So let's say we want to change the color, the font, and the font size of all of our H1s. So this is what we would do. Finally, the value. The value is the result that you are looking for. So what color, what font, and what font size do you want that H1 to be? And now that you know what they are, you can have so much fun with my video on how to style text with CSS. And don't worry if this is still confusing, that's completely normal. Just keep going at it, keep practicing, and I promise it will start to make sense as you do it more and more. And good news, we have a completely free live coding challenge. We would love to have you join us. I'll leave the link in the description below, but it's a great way for you to get hands-on and practical and do all this stuff with a community. Awesome, see you there.